Mic is on, and we are live.
Good morning to all of you, those here in the room today and those who are coming into us by Zoom or YouTube. This is the monthly meeting of the Washington County Land Use and Planning Committee. As chair, I call this meeting to order. The office of the clerk has done the appropriate posting of this meeting and the agenda items. As to roll call, Supervisors Gallitz, Vispalic, McCulloch, and Berger present. We have other supervisors here who are present today, but they're not part of this committee. Our new citizen member of this committee has been excused from attending this meeting. We will now please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. May I ask any men in the room with caps, please hold them over your hearts. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America. And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get underway this morning, I've got a couple of points. I'd like to address them. First of all, I ask all of you with caps or hats, as we did with the Pledge of Allegiance, while we're in the meeting today, please take them off. I guess that's just old military training from my standpoint. For those of you who are not familiar with the protocols of this committee, we will move the public hearing part of the agenda to be the first part of our program. This is normal procedure, as at any public hearing usually entails guests, and we want to hear then their inputs on the subject matter first. This precludes their having to wait while the committee works its way through its normal agenda and keeps everyone's personal time in consideration. Once the public hearing is over, the committee will convene and take its action on the matter. We will then continue the agenda as scheduled, starting with the consent agenda. In a few minutes, the clerk will read the official notice of public hearing. You will hear her tell us that the purpose of this hearing is to discuss and take action on a request to rezone a portion of the shoreline wetland zone code for Washington County at this particular property in the town of Trenton. That's it. To consider a request to rezone a particular property. That is all this committee will discuss and consider on this matter. The committee has no authority or other jurisdiction over what will be the final use of that property. Other governmental bodies may be involved with that decision. Our role is to strictly consider the request for rezoning. However, we realize there are those in the gallery this morning who have opinions to express about this property in general, and we want and encourage public discussion. We are here to serve you, our constituents. You are here to talk. We are here to listen. We ask only a few things on your part. You will be heard in the order you are lined up. Go to the podium in the middle of the room, and the red light will be on. When that is on, it means the microphone is on and you're live. You will be asked to provide your name and your address. And by that, I mean whether you live in the town of Trenton, Village of Germantown, City of Hartford, or wherever. We do not want information regarding your particular address or residence. If you have submitted a letter to this body or to the county regarding this subject, please do not speak. We have received many, many letters. I can honestly say dozens. We are not going to read all of those today, but they will be entered into the public record on this meeting. We ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Our clerk will be timing each presentation and will let us know when those 3 minutes are up. She's also got a small sign that says 30 seconds, so you can see when the clock is running down. At that time, you'll be asked, we'll be thanked for your comments and asked to allow the next person to speak. If someone else ahead of you says the same thing you were going to say, please be respectful of everyone's time. And either make a very brief comment that you agree or that you are just simply step out of line. This proceeding is being broadcast live and recorded, as will be your presentation. As such, there will be a permanent record of what is said here today. This meeting will be managed with complete and appropriate decorum. We will not tolerate any abusive language or the calling out of individuals, whether they are regular citizens or members of the county staff. If we have to gavel you down, you will be asked to leave and be escorted from the room. We will not answer questions. That is not our rule. We are here to listen. Again, the purpose of this public hearing is to discuss and decide upon the rezoning request, nothing more. I ask our committee members to not acknowledge comments by shaking or nodding your heads as presentations are made. The committee will have its opportunity to openly discuss the rezoning topic once the public comments are heard and hearing is closed. Madam Clerk, Mr. Stern, and committee members, have I missed anything?
No, sir.
If not, the clerk will proceed with the reading of the public hearing notice.
Notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held at a meeting of the Washington County Land Use and Planning Committee in room 1019 of the Washington County Government Center, 432 East Washington Street, West Bend, Wisconsin, on Thursday, January 19th, 2023 at 7:30 a.m. There will be heard and considered the petition by Washington County, property location northwest corner of the intersection of County Highway K and County Highway E in the town of Erin. Rezone a portion of the shoreline wetland zone of Washington County as follows. To rezone a portion of the county shoreline wetland zoning district, recognizing a delineated wetland area in the shoreline zone of an unnamed tributary to the Ashpin River, and to also approve a use and filling of a portion of this wetland for the purposes of constructing a private driveway, building pad, and residential structure. The property is located in the northwest quarter of the Northwest Quarter, Section 2, Township 9, North, Range 18 East, Town of Erin. The shoreline wetland floodplain zoning maps of Washington County are established and maintained pursuant to sections 275.03B and 275.12 of the Washington County Code, dated this third day of January 2023.
Mr. Stern.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, everyone. My name is Brad Stern. I'm the Washington County Attorney, and I welcome you all here today, and thank you for being here with us. I appreciate the opportunity as county's lead counsel to address a couple of legal matters that I think may be of interest to you all as the county prepares to open the public hearing this morning. First, in the spirit of complete transparency, it is important to note that the purpose of the request to rezone this property is so that the property may be used to establish a 980 placement. However, what the committee is not deciding today is whether that property will be used for that purpose. When it's all said and done, it may not be. The decision whether or not that property will be used for 980 purposes is not before the committee, and quite frankly, it never will be before this committee. But I would like to take just a moment to explain how a property ends up becoming a 980 property. I think that would be of interest. While the discussion of the underlying 980 case and whether residents support or oppose that particular placement is not on the agenda and therefore not a topic the committee can take up or debate, I do think we have some leeway here today to explain the basis for the request itself. State law requires the county to form a committee to locate a placement for an offender deemed a sexually violent person under Chapter 980 of the Wisconsin statutes within certain parameters that are extremely difficult to satisfy. As a result, very few properties meet the criteria for this placement. And for the benefit of those who may not know, the property cannot be located within 1,500 feet of a school, child care facility, public park, place of worship, youth center. And in this case, because the offender, Eric Dahl, committed a sex offense against a child, he can't live on a property adjacent to a property where a child's primary residence exists either, unless those residences are 1,500 feet apart minimum. The county is mandated by state law to carry out this unsavory task, whether we like it or not, or face substantial penalties in terms of what could amount to hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines, attorney's fees, and even if the county, and more importantly, its taxpayers, suffer those costs, we would still have to find a place to put this individual. For every day we do not place Mr. Dahl beyond the initial 120-day window in which we were ordered by the court to do so, we are considered under state law to be violating his civil rights, the county that is. So once the county locates a legally suitable placement, the property is proposed then to the state, who must then come in and give final approval before making the actual placement. And the individual in this case, again, Mr. Dahl, is under the custody and supervision of the state, not the county. Ultimately, there are many more steps to go through and many other decisions to be made before the county actually recommends the use of a specific property to the state. But that recommendation will not come today, will not be made by this committee, not be made as a result of today's vote, and could be many months down the road. Again, the matter before the committee today is simply to determine whether the requested rezone runs afoul of the county's ordinance. And the purpose of the underlying request, unfortunately, is not an appropriate consideration for this committee. The county was ordered to locate a placement nearly 2 years ago, and this process has been taking a very long time for reasons that I am not at liberty to disclose on the record or in public today. But the key to avoiding fines and penalties is to continue to show the court and the state that the county is making a diligent effort to comply with the 980 law. Today's request to rezone is to further that legal obligation. In my more than 20 years as a practitioner, the one thing I can tell you in this committee is that we come across laws every day that we do not agree with, but nonetheless, our role is to enforce them and abide by them, whether we like them or not. That's the position we find ourselves in as the county. And we have to do that until such time as those laws are amended by those who have the power to amend them. Chapter 980 imposes mandates on the county that we have no discretion to ignore. Commissioner Schmidt, Scott Schmidt, who is technically the petitioner, he's here today, but he's not here as a proponent of Chapter 980, the 980 law. He's here in his official capacity because he's required to do this work. This was not his idea, not his desire, but he's the conduit to bring the petition forward the way that has to happen. Land Use and Planning Department, same thing. They only advise whether the project is in violation of county ordinance in terms of the rezone. Their recommendation has nothing to do with their opinions on Chapter 980. Even the Chapter 980 committee, who is formed and required to be formed by statute, same thing. Contemplating a 980 placement is not something any of us particularly enjoy or embrace or want to do, but is a legal obligation imposed upon us by the state of Wisconsin in Madison. With that said, I hope these remarks help clarify a little bit of the position we find ourselves in here today. I hope these remarks are helpful to the public who is here and joining us today. And I hope that these remarks also help the committee narrow its focus and aid in its deliberations. And I appreciate again the time. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Stern. This public hearing pertaining to the rezoning of a portion of a shoreland wetland zone of Washington County is now open. Now, as I stated before, when you come to the podium, please state your name and your residency. Leave out your street address. We don't want any doxing going on. All speakers will be allowed 3 minutes for their presentations. This committee will listen to, but will not answer questions nor comment. The entire session is being broadcast and proper decorum will be maintained. Now, who is the first speaker, please? I understand you're coming up from, all right, the clerk will call the speakers. All right.
So I'll call the first page, and if you want to be prepared and stand in a line behind the first speaker or by Jamie on that side of the room. Scott Schrader will be first, Kristen Geis, Don Gallo, and Bob Smirlo. And I apologize for saying anyone's names incorrectly.
Good morning. Thank you for your time. My name is Scott Schrader, and I am the property owner that butts up to the so-called property to be filled by the wetland. I have the most direct impact, and I'm here today as a chemist, as a person who's spent 30 years providing the public safe drinking water, and as a person who's very experienced in the Clean Water Act for all of America. This site I bought 20 years ago because my wife and I wanted to protect it, to make sure that we kept this gem hidden from the public. When I found out it was going to be filled, I was very, very sad because it's an aided wetland. But what made me even sadder was that really due diligence was not done by the DNR or the Army Corps of Engineers to further really understand the uniqueness of this property, Not seen in Wisconsin, certainly not seen in Washington County, and some have indicated 1 in 7 in the world. I have shown with pictures of the written document that I have submitted, the true springs that are within feet of the property line. And as the lawyers came out yesterday and looked, there's even some springs almost on the property line. They bubble out of the ground. They are not just some random little water. They are truly filled with watercress. They provide safety for animals in the winters that are harsh because they always flow. They are always there flowing. They are something that Washington County should be proud of. When I first took the property, I offered it as a park to basically the state. I was too young at that time for them to do some type of transfer to Pike Lake. But they are unique and they are special. And this wetland fill is not right in the sense of how many feet from those springs will be there. They're not following their own setbacks for an aided wetland at 75 feet. At 25 feet, this silt fence with a little bit of topsoil, this is a mound of dirt that's going to be basically sloping down. In my report, I show that there's no way you can slope without having the effect on the springs. In their own report, in the wetland delineation report, it shows the facts. The fact is they check mark the box that they say will impact this aided wetland. This aided wetland is protected by basically the federal government, Clean Water Act. There's going to be, I have an artesian well, or as they call a free flowing well. That well goes into my 1 acre pond. This site does not have the ability to actually take that water should they drill into these springs. Their well there for this location will also potentially flow in my wetland and discharge. That is illegal. I'm here today to tell you that I don't want to get to that point because I don't want the springs destroyed. I'm not here for the 980 law. I am not here for any of that. I'm here because I'm an environmentalist, a chemist, and you happen to pick the property that I live on. And I cannot stand here and not give you my emotion and my plea with you to not do this. This is wrong. This is something that you and all your children will never see again the way it is. But I will still protect it as much as I can. Hence why I'm here today. I'm here with you to please stop the fill of this wetland. They didn't look, the DNR site survey maps that I have, they took 3 pictures with 3 people there. Lisa Dito, the lead investigator, in a drought. They never studied the rusty patch bumblebee, which is a federally endangered species. They didn't do any of these things. And I have the proof because it's in their own wetland delineation report. They say they didn't neither confirm or deny. They can now backtrack on the matter if they'd like. But the proof is in the report. The proof is in the checkmark boxes. They also checkmark that they would not impede drainage on my site without the landowner's consent.
Thank you, sir, but the time has expired.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Kristen Geese, Town of Hartford. So thank you all for allowing us to come in and talk to you today. I am a botanist and I've been an ecologist for over 20 years. I'm deeply disturbed by what I see in front of me today. My profession is to restore wetlands. So I'm very, very used to reading wetland delineation reports, and I echo Scott's comments. I won't reiterate them, but I will echo that they didn't follow their proper process. There's no one else that would go through a process like this and get an approval. So obviously there's inaccuracies in the descriptions. There was not site visits. They are trying to now, obviously through this process, rezone those shoreline restrictions. And within your petition set forth, and for you today to vote on, I find it fascinating. It's actually not a little bit of fill that will impact the wetland. It's 50% of a wetland that would be filled and harmed. And everything Scott said is accurate. Those facts are actually, I think, ironic that it even states how it used to be a roadway. That was in 1970. So we've had over 50 years of Mother Nature taking the reins and restoring it. So if I really implore you before you vote to actually step foot on that property and watch those artesian springs flow. Mother Nature has won. There's animals that have returned. The biotic index that's listed in that wetland delineation, so the plant species, lists all aquatic wetland loving plants. This isn't a flaw, this is accuracy, but they checked a box anyways. I think it's municipal bias, if you want my opinions. There's a species list of all kinds that live in that, whether you see them or it's on that list on that report. Things from salamanders, which are an indicator of a wetland species. The Blanding's turtle, which was endangered 8 years ago and then delisted. So it's not a federally endangered species, but nonetheless it was. So I would really rather not repeat history and get back on that list. There's Sawat owls that nest in those trees. When you have an owl, that means you have a food chain, everything below it. And we probably don't even know what's all there because it hasn't been monitored. Most importantly, the rusty patch bumblebee is there as well. That is a federally endangered species. And had anyone else applied for this permit and we being within that potential zone that we are in, the high potential zone, we wouldn't have been approved. All of these reasons make it evidence that this is a flawed permitting process and it needs to be reevaluated. We need to ask for more evidence. The DNR and the Army Corps have not served us right. I also want you to consider that because this is a federally endangered species, that is a Species Act that was put forth in 1970 as well. Rusty patch was added to it in 2020. And it seems that now the laws of the federal government for a Chapter 980 individual are now superseding the laws of an endangered species who has no voice. Makes no sense to me. So I guess, because I can see time as well, I just want to make sure that you understand that your actions today could stop this. You could do due diligence for your community to listen to them and to ask for more time, to have it properly indexed, properly monitored, so the facts could be in front of you and you can make an informed decision. Right now, you are not making an informed decision because you don't have it. They didn't do you justice. And right now they're pointing fingers at one another, blaming the other side. So I encourage you to reevaluate this process and do it correctly. Thank you.
My name is Bob Smerlo. It appears that Attorney Gallo was not able to make this. So I guess I'm the next one on the list. Gentlemen, I realize your job with the 980 law is a rough situation. And I'm not here to talk about it, but I do realize it. And I want to thank a couple of the members of your committee who actually came out and walked that land. I'm asking that possibly all of you should walk that land and see what it is, not by the report, but walking the land before you do anything. I live right in the town of Erin, right across from the property. I think I said that. The parcel in question is not a lot. It has not existed as part of a lot since the 1960s, if ever. It's part of a road right of way, which means it's got to be split and from the road right of way into a buildable lot. It will never, according to your rules or the town of Erin's rules, which in your zoning, your own zoning laws say that you will follow the town of Erin's rules, except if yours are more stringent. And I'm paraphrasing from my stuff only to keep my time down. It's not buildable. Town of Erin, minimum lot size, 1.5 acres, and that's only under very, very restrictive conditions. This lot is less than 1/4 acre, non-conforming by 1.25 acres. Setbacks, 100 feet from the center line of the road or 50 feet from the right of way. This lot is non-conforming. In fact, if you use those figures, your figures, or the town's figures, there isn't a buildable inch on that lot when you look at the setbacks. Shoreline setback, 75 feet. I'm not going to get into where the actual shoreline is, but I believe that would be from the springs. That doesn't match either. Minimum lot size in the shoreline zoning area, 2,000 square feet with 100 feet of frontage at the ordinary high water mark. This lot is 9,600, not even half. Front line, 115.26. Basically, according to the formula you have for lot size, this thing isn't wide enough. And I can go on. It just doesn't fit, not by a little, but by a lot. I, as a realtor, have been involved in a lot of land development and things like that. You would never pass this if I came to you. And finally, the loss of home value. If you put up basically anything in a tin shack on the side of the road, which is what it's gonna be, because you've got no lot there, it's gonna be something that's noticeable to everybody. It is gonna impact our land values. It's gonna stop people from buying the adjacent properties or cut their values by probably 30 to 40%. So I'm imploring you to act decently and think about the rights of the people around there and their land rights and their rights to decent zoning and that sort of stuff over the fact that you have a convicted person that has more rights than the people who are there paying their taxes and doing everything else. I know I've ran over, but thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
The next group will be Nancy Landon, Patrick Landon, Russell Legg, and Stefan Rubley.
I'm Nancy Landon. I live in the town of Erin. I'm an RN. I'm a do no harm kind of person. You people should set the standard. You should lead by example. How can you expect the rest of the population to do what you refuse to do? Be the steward and work with the DNR and set up and do the right thing. Protect our environment for the generations to follow. Do not fill our wetlands, protect our waters, our endangered species, both federal and local, the bumblebee, the salamander, and anything else that we presently are unaware of. In the West, they're fighting over water. People in California have been selling land to Saudi Arabia for years, at least 10 that I am aware of. Because over in Saudi Arabia, they do not have land to grow alfalfa on. And so they buy land in the West that has water rights. They make hay, they take it over to Saudi Arabia and they feed their animals. In Scottsdale has now a limited how much water Rio Verde can have because Scottsdale is running out of water. We have cranes in Wisconsin. I've been keeping track of them since I was a little girl and I'm 73. They come to Wisconsin. They used to come in the end of May and leave in August. Now they come in March, they leave in November. Why do you think that is? Because there is no water in the South. They come up here, they raise their young, and then they go back home. If I'm going to do my best to protect my property for future generations, the least you can do is I can expect the same from you people. I'm told that the EPA and the DNR did not care about the endangered bumblebee or the endangered salamander. Obviously, you people do not care where your food comes from or that all the food that you eat is pollinated by something. Thank you very much.
I'm Pat Landon, town of Erin, and I'm also a former supervisor for the town. The town of Erin works under what is referred to as the 89 ordinances. Back in 1989, the town formed these ordinances. The town fathers back then saw the need to protect the environment of the town. That's how come you will see throughout our ordinances, upland conservancy, lowland conservancy, wetlands, shorelands. This is all to protect the environment. You're backfilling part of that environment. The question I have for all of you is how does that benefit the residents, the people of this state now and in the future? If there's no benefit to the people as a whole, why are you doing it? That is part of the watershed. It goes way past Erin. It goes down into Dodge County and affects more than just Erin. And I think you people need to start thinking long-term of the environmental impact you are going to create. Once you start backfilling, where's it stop? It's kind of like a rat. A rat will come to a piece of cheese and nibble away a little here and a little there until they have the whole piece. Don't go there. Thank you.
Morning, Russell Legg, Town of Erin. There's not a whole lot I can add that I haven't heard already from the rest of our people. I just want to go on record that I've been a construction manager for the last 37 years. I've went to plenty of zoning meetings and tried to get properties approved for something similar to this maybe. But if I brought this one to them with this piece of land, I'd be thrown out. They wouldn't even listen to it. And I think all of you have an obligation to us to listen to all the people here and make the right decision for us. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Steve Rubley. I'm a Town of Erin resident. This proposal is upsetting on so many levels. To start, the DNR report used to obtain a permit contained erroneous information. As confirmed with many DNR representatives, the paperwork is flawed and was completed by a newly hired DNR employee who never personally visited the proposed site as part of their evaluation. Whether it was due to incompetence or a conspiracy to quickly ramp through an approval to expedite the project, the fact remains that the evaluation of the site was highly flawed. In light of this information, we ask that the decision to proceed with this project at this site be delayed. We ask that a more thorough evaluation of this wetland be performed in the coming spring and summer to determine the appropriateness of this site for such a project. The proposed site is a wetland that contains numerous natural springs, which is water that residents drink from their wells. Filling in such a wetland, as mentioned earlier, not only affects that area, but with the fluidity of water, it transcends much further than that. Filling in such a wetland not only destroys the natural beauty, but also risks contaminating drinking water. Furthermore, there is documented evidence that this wetland is home, as mentioned by Christine and others, to the rusty patch bumblebee. Per the Endangered Species Act, this bee is a federally protected species, as it is endangered. Confirmation of the rusty patch bumblebee as a denizen of this wetland alone should negate the wetland from being a suitable site for this project. In addition to the DNR negligence and the previously noted environmental concerns, this proposed project not only violates numerous Town of Erin building and zoning laws, but also violates some of the county's own laws, as mentioned previously by the gentleman behind me. How is that appropriate? When I raise kids, I have them follow the rules that I live by myself. That's not unlike a county or a town. When I tried building there, I had to follow certain rules, right? Same thing with county. What does that say to those governed or those kids being raised when you say you do as I say and not as I do? Okay, that doesn't fly well, and it won't end well. Our laws are there to protect the scenic beauty in our town, maintain the functionality of our natural areas, and ensure human impact is aesthetically pleasing. As a town, we aren't about filling in unique and precious wetlands, destroying habitat, further threatening endangered species, and parking a trailer to shelter a pedophile. Such activity would detract from the town's natural beauty and decrease the value of the properties of the town's residents. My wife and I would both wish to go on record as strongly disapproving of the county project and its proposed site. Thank you.
The next group will be Jordan Lucen and Thomas Huber. And Christine Geis and Kelly Wendorf.
You didn't get your 7 inches of snow.
I'm Jordan Lucen. I live in Erin. I wrote this long article here. Pretty much everything was talked about already. I'm 100% against this whole going through with everything. Not only would it affect the environmental aspect, but it would totally affect just the way of life around there for everybody. That's all I gotta say.
Thomas Huber, town of Hartford, lived in proximity to the property for 30 years. And I just want to tell the board that I endorse the injections of those who have spoken before me. Thank you.
Is Kristen? Oh, okay. No. Kelly Wendorf.
Good morning and thank you. Kelly Wendorf, town of Hartford. My wife and I moved to this area 3 years ago. It's beautiful. Really proud and somewhat surprised. We have some really, really smart people that I'm learning about. Chemists, botanists, attorneys, way smarter than I'll ever be. Understand you have an obligation to the state. Thank you for your obligation to listen to your constituents. I think that's what I asked today is respect the really smart people in the room. They know more about this than I do, or maybe some of you. They're challenging some things that I think we all should be challenging. So that's my request. The cost of moving forward and making the wrong decision is very great. The cost of reevaluating this, taking the due diligence and the time required to possibly remonitor this and understand the facts and listen to the people behind me. I think the cost of that is low. So that's my request. Thank you.
Next is Mark Lindberg. And then Dawn Drager, you didn't check if you wanted to speak, so I'm not sure. No, okay, and then Jill Krell? No, okay. Scott Sullivan will be following and we'll go from there.
Good morning. I'm Mark Lindborg. I live in Hartford Township. I want to thank the committee for taking the time to hear our comments. It's very important. And I think you've heard the good reasons why we are in opposition to moving ahead with filling this landfill, so I won't repeat those things. I'll just summarize that the opposition is clear based on environmental issues. On one thing that wasn't brought up, I think there's real concerns about traffic safety here. I've looked at the ordinances of the county and I don't believe this fits the setbacks at an intersection as well, once you put a trailer there. So I think it's another area that has not been considered well before someone moved ahead on this. And finally, of course, and you can rule on this, is the aesthetic impacts it has on the community. And certainly you can approve this. The question is, I think for you to think about today, from all the things that you've heard, is it the right thing to do to approve this? So I ask for your careful consideration in this matter. Thank you.
Morning, Scott Sullivan, town of Hartford. I live 2 driveways to the west of where this is being proposed to be put. I don't need to reiterate all the points that the many smart people behind me already stated. I just wanted to put on the record my strong opposition to this. I've lived on this road, Highway E, since 2010. I know the area. I've seen the natural beauty. It's the reason why my wife and I purchased the land we did in 2017. I asked you to reconsider, given the zoning flaws that are clearly spelled out in the flaws put in front of you. I asked that you take a look specifically to all the environmental impacts and issues and the flaws in the DNR process that is clearly evident if anyone goes through and reads the permit, whether it's the general process that they did not follow, whether it's the fact that they didn't even acknowledge the endangered species or take the time to do their due diligence, whether it's the fact that there's a beautiful artesian spring that I've had the opportunity to drive past almost every single day. I've never seen it once freeze over. Even when we had that polar vortex a few years ago, it was still flowing. Just to vouch and say, I've seen this personally. I've also personally on my property, which is just about 2,500 feet west of this, personally seen that special rusty patch bumblebee on my land. So I know it's there. So given these things, I ask you to reconsider, and I thank you for your time today.
Next is Jim Holden, Justin Cross. Jim's passing. Okay, Justin Cross. And then it'll be Brian and Angela Rosine. One or two of you.
Well, thanks for hearing me today. I think everybody else has probably made a good case for the environmental issues on this. I'm here to tell you about the guy who did it, the one you're trying to place. He molested my niece in my own house. He's done things like this in the past with his own family. We come to find out later. My niece lives 15 or 3/4 of a mile up the street from him, not the one it happened to, my other one. She's got a young kid. She's pregnant. This can't happen. I am good friends with Scott, went to high school with him. Kristen was a neighbor of mine. They all made the argument. They did a great job with it. I'm here to tell you about the guy. And that's about it. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Angela Rosine and I'm a town of Erin resident. I'm also here to speak about the things that will affect the families in this area. Me and my husband my grandparents actually bought a farm in this area in 2004, and now me and my husband own it. We restored this 1880s homestead with my grandpa as he died of cancer. There's a lot that we've put in every single year to this farm. And now I have two little girls that I raise on this land. And I want to tell you that the people that live in this area, that live on these rural properties, live a lifestyle where the kids go outside all day long and tend to the farms and tend to their animals. I think this is an important way of life that is vanishing. These kids are raised with independence, responsibility, and I think it's important that we're able to do that. And if this man is living that close to my house, I will not be able to do that. And that breaks my heart because of all the work and all the family and all the time and sweat and tears that have gone into this property to make it that for my little girls. When I drive down Highway K almost daily and I look west and I see that sunset, I always think to myself, I am so lucky to live here. I am blessed to call this home. This man does not deserve that. Thank you. Next will be Colleen Wendorf and Dennis Ganger or Ganser. Are either of those two wanting to speak?
That's a bit of a tough act to follow, but thank you for letting us speak today. My name is Colleen Wendorf. I live in the town of Hartford. I'm coming to you today also as a mom. I think those moms spoke to you for a different cause. I'm going to stick to the environmental cause that you guys are here to hear of today. Not about the facts that the environmentalists talked to you about, just on how I enjoy this land myself. As an avid runner, my husband is an avid runner. I have two children who are middle school age to run cross country. Waterford is our running route. We run from K to 83. From our house, it's like a perfect 2.5 miles that my kids can do. We've gloved up and saved turtles at this very spot from crossing the road. We stop and watch bald eagles soar overhead. I've been privileged enough to step on Scott's land and see these natural springs for myself. And, you know, forget about the scientific aspect of it. These places are almost magical. To watch this water bubbling up out of the ground in the dead of winter and see the green plants growing in the dead of winter, watching deer come and feed and ducks when it's 10 degrees outside, it feels like it's a magical spot, not just a scientific wonder as well. So what I'm asking for you to do today is please just take a pause. Take a look at this site, make sure that all of the I's are dotted and T's are crossed before you step in and destroy a spot that is so beautiful, that you keep my children from being able to save turtles in this spot and watch the eagles soar overhead. I don't want to be able to tell my nature loving daughter that Washington County didn't absolutely do all of its work to make sure that this precious place wasn't destroyed. The precedence this sets for other wetlands to be destroyed. I don't want to have to look them in the eye and tell them that it wasn't cared about and that other wetlands will not be protected in the same way in the future as well. Thank you.
Morning, I'm Dennis Ganser. I live on Marine Scenic Drive, about 1,000 feet from this proposed site. I just want to add to the species that are in there. I'm the one that found a blanding turtle crossing my lot. It was probably 14 inches across. And they're a cross between a tortoise and a turtle. So they're quite unique and they live about 70 years. I've also, in developing our property, 23 years ago, I ran into 4 or 5 Midwest worm snakes, which I'd never seen before. And in my online, I realized that in Wisconsin, there's only 2 sites that have them that are recorded. This one isn't, but they're there. So next time I find one, I'll report it and get it certified. The other thing is I have springs on my property too. There's a line of springs that go right along Marine Scenic Drive. Mine is the first. And in drought years, they really slow down. In rainy years, they really speed up. So they're running about average now. These springs, not only on my land, but they run to my neighbors. 2 of my neighbors have these springs on their property too, that are across the road from this site. The proposal to spot a trailer on Marine Scenic Drive in violation of both Aaron codes and Washington codes is taking eminent domain, a road too far. Government's job is to protect us, and this proposal is a heinous violation of the public trust. Thank you.
Next is Dave Rutowski, and then Catherine O'Keefe and Michael Burrow.
Good morning, board. My name is Dave Rutowski, City of Hartford. Shakespeare said once, "The lady doth protest too much." When was the last time you saw this kind of turnout for a zoning issue for a single lot? Call it a false flag, call it false pretense. I will assure you the majority of the people behind me are not here for the environment. They may say they are, and they're lying to you. They provide in both print, email, on the internet and social media that they said flat out, we cannot win the fight against the individual, but we can win the fight for the environment. They see this board and its powers as the weak underbelly of the government. You're the soft spot they can attack most easily versus the Department of Justice. They have talking points like there are several natural springs on the property. What they really mean is there's natural springs near the property. They say that this affects our drinking water. Now, in the world of drinking water, there's 3 types: surface water, groundwater, and groundwater under the influence of surface water. Because of the artesian natures of the springs on this or near the property, what's happening is the positive pressure is pushing water out, not going down into their drinking water. So there'd be no effect on this property and their drinking water. Plus, no hydrological or hydraulic surveys have actually been done to see where this water is going to truly identify if it is even part of their drinking water profile. Secondly, they're calling out the DNR, that the paperwork wasn't filed, including calling out a brand new employee, basically attacking the new guy on the job for not doing due diligence, when it's still the DNR doing its job. According to the Washington County GIS, this site was a road back before 1941. That's as far back as the records go. It was part of a road. It's been filled from 1941 to when the road was reconfigured in 1969. That was over 30 years. From 1969 to 2022, 53 years, no one suddenly cared about the environment and what was done on that site. And now suddenly everyone's hair is on fire. I think there's something up here other than the environment. No soil borings were done on this site. And if they were, stratification would show you that the site has already been filled. So filling the site is not a new issue. It's an issue that's been in place for over 85 years. Finally, because I'm running out of time, the bumblebee. According to the DNR, it was highly likelihood to be in and around the location. Likelihood and around, not identified on. And some of the DNR's own requirements for the property to have or to be a good place for the bumblebee is no paved roads. Oh, there's roads on two sides. No road shoulders. Again, the same. And 3, it does not survive well on wetland or open land. So if we're discussing wetland, the property is surrounded by non-conforming habitat. Thank you.
Catherine O'Keefe.
Good morning. Thank you for hearing us speak today. I heard that you didn't necessarily have to do this, and so I appreciate the time. I am Catherine O'Keefe, and I live in the watershed of the Ashippun on Druid Lake. In 2008, we had devastating floods in our area. Many of my neighbors were flooded, but it's not only in 2008. We have the risk of flooding almost every spring. And by filling this waterland, it increased our risk of additional flooding and additional property damage in our area. Filling of this wetland also increases our chances of having more invasive species within the water that is fairly clean at this point. We've been able to avoid having zebra mussels and other types of invasive species in Druid Lake, and we like to keep it clean. I think a highlight of what other people are saying is, why would we give special privileges to this individual at the devastation that many of us could face? I am opposed to this. My family is opposed to this, and I thank you for your time.
Good morning, Mike Burrow, Town of Polk. Certainly, I'm not as directly impacted by this as others are. We've heard from some very knowledgeable people, and I appreciate the right to speak and that they were courageous enough to come forward and share information with you that I really feel that you should consider. I am privileged to live by a bog, been told by the DNR that it's one of the farthest south locations of a bog. Evidently, this is typical in northern Wisconsin, but not so much in southeastern Wisconsin. And I do appreciate what that type of natural resource is worth. I've heard the town of Erin on board as saying that they try to protect wetlands as much as possible, and there's some other permits that would need to be gotten on this. But I do urge, as I mentioned, I do appreciate the right to speak. It's being threatened more and more throughout our country. I've appreciated Washington County, the clean government that we have, and I do urge you to continue to listen to your constituents and make the right decisions. Thank you for your time.
Next will be Jeff Phillips. And following him, Tim Getzky.
Hi, I'm Jeff Phillips, proud 22-year resident of Erin. And I want to just point out, zoning, you guys have a tough job, and I really do appreciate you listening to us on all fronts, not just the zoning issue, because you can feel the emotion behind me. And I'm proud of my neighbors and the intelligence that's been brought to this issue. I live just east of this on a Kettle Moraine Scenic Drive that empties right where this property is. We have an Ice Age trail running right along our farm. I've got a small hobby farm where we raise animals. Much of what we enjoy, my grandkids play in those farms and fields and on the road in Waterford Road. They get to enjoy that because of the zoning that's been put in place up till now. The Ice Age Trail has its own ordinances. We're within walking distance of a state park. In the fall, we've got, Harley groups and Mustang groups and BMW groups that go up and down the road constantly to enjoy the views that in part you folks have helped create with previous zoning and keeping us from putting our houses too close to the road or, driveways in the wrong spots and things like that. This is no small issue. My good neighbor Bob pointed out that as a realtor, when somebody, if they don't ask, you don't have to tell, but you see a tin can on that corner, which will block the view, by the way, and cause more accidents. There's already a lot of accidents on that corner. They're going to ask, hey, what's with the trailer? There's no trailers out here. Why do you have one? Then he's forced to answer that question, which will then, of course, lower the value of whatever it is he's trying to sell or his counterparts. Jordan pointed out, he talked to me about a week ago and damn near brought tears to my eyes. His children play in these woods, they hunt for antler sheds. The minute this guy moves in, that's over. That innocence of our, little farm community, where I know more of my neighbors here after 22 years than I did living in quarter-acre lots in Oak Creek for 20 years, where we were one on top of the other. These are, it's so I just want to say that, thank you. Please reconsider this. The nature, the actual nature of this area depends on the decision that you're going to make. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Tim Getzky and I live in the town of Erin. And I'm sorry if I get emotional during this, but I grew up in the town of Erin. I love the town of Erin. I love the beauty. I love the hills. I love Holy Hill. I love the wetland. And unlike the guy that talked a little while ago, I care about the people, not just myself. And I agree with everything they're saying. And I don't envy you guys. I don't. But I bought 10 acres, 600 feet from this property 4 years ago. I have a pond on it. I have a creek that comes out of it. 4 acres are wetland. And I had to make sure every T was crossed and every I was dotted when I built my house on this land to make sure I wasn't in a wetland. Make sure I was off a floodplain, which was the floodplain was extreme for a little creek that comes through my land, but I agreed to it. I knew why, what it meant to the environment in town of Erin. I've been burning off the field in front of me for the last 3 years because it's taken over by non-native species and old alfalfa. And now it's got native grasses in there and flowers, and I see monarch butterflies. I see the rusty patch bumblebee all the time. And it's heartwarming. It's unbelievable to see the beauty in the town of Erin. And for me to see a trailer in the corner by my house is unbelievable. It's something I never thought I'd have to think about with the value of my property and just driving by it. That road, unfortunately, is one of the busiest roads in the town of Erin that I live on an E, because people cut between K and 83 and everybody's going to be seeing this freaking trailer sitting up from my house that I'll be staring at every day. I don't care, everybody's a sex offender. Yeah, they got to go somewhere. But in a trailer in the town of Erin, come on. There's better choices than that. That's all I got to say. Thank you for your time.
Next will be Heather War. And then Lisa Jalen, you didn't check if you wanted to speak. I'm just checking if you do.
Okay.
Good morning. My name is Heather Ware. I live in the town of Erin. I actually had two things prepared to speak about today, but the experts before me and my very concerned community members, I think, did a very good job about talking about the various concerns in regard to the wetlands, the habitats that will be disrupted, and just the overall concerns that we have that are multiple layers. So I've decided today that I'm going to speak to regarding children. I have been told that that is something that we can talk to you about today. So I'd like to do that. And I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to do that. I live about 1,500 feet away from the site, and I teach riding lessons, horseback riding lessons to small children. And I'm just going to read what I have so I can keep to the time. In September, my data was used in court as I teach approximately 20 children on a weekly basis in hopes that it would stop the site from moving forward. A judge deemed that I was not considered a youth center, and therefore the 1,500 feet rule did not apply. I don't understand that. When I tried to do my research to find out why I wasn't a youth center, according to the definition that I could see, a youth center is any place that serves children on a consistent basis. So in my world, that is what I do. So and that's a different subject. Anyways, the children that I teach love coming to my farm. They say it's their favorite day of the week. Parents comment to me on how happy their kids are when they are at my farm. I provide more than riding lessons. I provide opportunities for children to learn life skills. I teach responsibility and understanding and compassion for animals, for other people. I provide opportunities for these kids to gain confidence and self-esteem in themselves. When they have a bad day at school and they come to my farm, it goes away and they feel at peace again. I provide a nurturing environment where kids feel safe and they learn and they grow in a multitude of ways. It greatly saddens me that all of the above may come to an end if this placement goes through. Parents may pull their children from the program because they no longer feel it's a safe environment, and I would understand their viewpoint. My students will be devastated if that happens. I'm worried that an offender may be watching us. I'm really worried that an offender may try to hurt the children, and then I'm left with, how do I protect these innocent kids? I'm out of time. But I just wanted to come to you from a different standpoint because, again, the people before me did a beautiful job of talking about other concerns. This also is a concern of ours. Thank you.
Lisa's not speaking.
No.
Okay. Sandra Katurkis, and I apologize for mispronouncing your last name possibly. And then there's Luis Morgas Vega, who did not check if they wanted to speak. So I'm just checking to see if you're interested in speaking. Thomas Hawkins.
I'm Sandra Katurkis from Erin. I am a gardener. I pull buckthorn, even if I have a very damaged hip. And I love this place. And I'm here to say that you do have a DNR permit but it isn't the right one for this. It's not valid for what you're doing. I received yesterday from Travis Schrader, the head of the department, I guess, for giving out permits. And had quite a long talk with him, and I have the documents that he sent me about the history of the correspondence that went into getting this proposal on the road and why we are here. And you have a general permit for wetlands. And that general permit is given out for a property that's less than 10,000, and for a property that is less than 10,000 square feet. They do not come to see the property. They don't have the resources to send people for that. Now, what you have is a general, but there are specific things that you have to fill out. And if there are certain conditions for the property, you need an individual permit. And there is a 2-page list here of any one thing on this list requires that you not get a general, but an individual permit in order to change the wetland. And the things on this list that are highlighted are just exactly what these people have been talking about that are not right. The DNR has been criticized for being sloppy or whatever. They haven't been sloppy. The law says here, there is a way to address this situation that we have. The individual, the general permit requires, you cannot have a springs in the area to get a general permit. You cannot have, you have to, if it has a significant adverse impact on the public rights and interests, you do not need, you can't use a general permit. If you have let's see. If you have any federal endangered species, you cannot use a general permit for this wetland. Now, you did, sorry.
Good morning. My name's Thomas Hawkins. My wife and I also live off of a tributary to the Ashokan River. Many things have already been talked about. I have a document here for the written record that summarizes our particular point of view from our property and our location. I think most of that has been already covered. Not sure if you've seen this. Doesn't look like a bullseye, but I bet you can see it from there. That's where the bumblebee is. Thank you for your time. And where can I put this into the written record? I know I can't ask you questions. Somebody up here knows where. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Luis Morges and I live in the town of Erin. We all come here for very different reasons, sometimes on very different motives. From the gentlemen that spoke about all the possible reasons why it's okay, all the people that talk about the environmental stuff. I think my encouragement to you as a governing body is to always balance the equation between the laws and also the constituencies you serve. And today you're hearing a lot of opposition to the decision you're actually about to make. So I encourage you to consider that. There's a lot of, for sure, there's a lot of possible reasons why you might consider delaying and study more. But ultimately, my encouragement is to think about the people that showed up today and a day of work, and trying to support and put their position for you to reconsider what you're about to do. Thank you.
The final speaker on our list is Paulette Smirl. Okay, sorry.
Hi, my name is Paulette Smirl. I live in the town of Erin. I live directly across from the proposed site. After living on County K since 1995, I am talking about the safety issue here. There's been a number of accidents there where somebody's coming east on Highway E and they miss that corner and they land right into the middle of that property. I would hate to see whoever lives in that mobile home that you're going to erect there be injured in any way by that. Not only from there do they come, but they also have seen them coming south on K, end up in that land. I've seen them coming north on K where they totally missed that corner and they use that intersection or that land to scoot across to Highway E. So I am very concerned about the safety issue on that property. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Chairman, may I request permission to amend my choice to speak? I declined, but I would like to take perhaps 30 seconds to make an appropriate conclusion perhaps for the public.
Certainly identify yourself at the podium, please.
Good morning. My name is Greg Witzel. I'm town city of West Bend. We do not inherit this earth from our ancestors. We entrust it to our future and our children. So we have a sacred duty to make sure that we give that right to the children that we have earned to enjoy this. Having attended a number of zoning conferences, planning conferences, and classes, in conclusion, I'm just reminding, it was well stated a moment or two ago, but as a reminder, you have an obligation to balance property rights with the environment and the good of the community at large. That was my takeaway from all of those things I've attended. And I'm just reminding you that that's your sacred duty. And I want to thank you so much for your time to convene this and to hear the comments.
May I also amend my choice to not speak?
Yes, ma'am. Identify yourself at the podium, please.
I am Katie Lucen. We live, we are actually the closest family. See, I wasn't going to speak because okay. So I wasn't going to speak because I'm having a very hard time holding myself together, but here I am. So again, we are the closest family to this proposed land with children. I feel that it has violated our constitutional rights as well as my children if this man is placed on this property. It is within 1,000 feet of my home. Again, as Jeff said, our children are out on the property all the time. Using the land, just doing outdoor activities that a lot of children don't even do these days. If this were to go through and this man were to be placed, it would be a threat to their freedom, their safety. It would be, the peace of mind would be gone. Their and our mental health and quality of life would be significantly impacted. The fact that they probably wouldn't even be able to have friends over as they grow up. Nobody, as a respectable parent and a law-abiding citizen, is going to want their child at a friend's house that has this potential so close to it. So that eliminates that option for them. the fact that we couldn't even leave our kids outside unattended for any period of time is sickening. We moved out to the country and built our dream home 3 years ago there to be able to do this, to be able to have these freedoms, to be able to have my children experience this. The freedom and the beauty of our area. And yeah, that's, I guess, where I am. I mean, the look of the property and the property values is obviously a huge thing. But when it comes to the safety of us and our children and possibly for generations on, that is extreme. You can't replace the opportunity that a lot of the families in our areas have because of the beauty of the area and the value of, the environment and how much we all put into it as far as work and effort. And that would be taking that away from us and our children. And like I said, affecting our quality of life tremendously. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who has not had the opportunity to address this group this morning? We want to thank all of you for being here, taking your time away on, I understand some areas of the county, the road conditions are not very nice this morning. But thank you for coming. At this point in time, we're going to take a 5-minute recess. Call it a comfort break if you wish. And at that point in time, we will reconvene as a committee meeting. The public hearing is closed. We're back live as soon as Supervisor McCulick returns. We'll get underway with the regular committee activities this morning. I want to thank again everybody for showing up this morning. I want to also thank everybody for keeping everything on a nice even plane in terms of discussion. There was some emotional some emotional activities or presentations here this morning, and some scientific. And in any case, we want to thank the public for turning up this morning and again expressing your views. We're going to now go back to our regular agenda, which will be our committee discussion on the restoring a portion of the shoreline wetland zone at the intersection of counties K and E. Is there a motion and a second to proceed with the committee action? Mr. Vespalik, Mr. McCulick, all right. There was a great deal of information in the packets that were distributed this morning. Would the committee like to hear from Mr. Schmidt or Attorney Stern regarding any details that have not been discussed?
Excuse me, is there going to be a presentation by Mr. Sebo about the application or?
The application would be, I believe that would be Mr. Schmidt, or is that you, Mr. Sebo?
I think Supervisor Gallant's asked for me to make a comment on the report. Somebody make a comment. Yeah, I put the committee report in your packet, so you have that. If there's any questions, I'll take that. And obviously in the report, it was mentioned that our determination of allowing the rezone for this property, and it's a zoning that allows for the driveway and the building pad in the house, is based on significant adverse impact. So there will be 5,400 square feet of wetland added to the shoreline zoning map. And then if the rezone goes through, there'll be the $5,400 or 5,400 square feet approximately of the wetland that would be rezoned. So in total, there's 10,800 square feet of new wetland identified. And the petition is to actually rezone half of that for the purpose of the driveway and building pad and trailer.
Other questions or comments from the committee? One thing I would ask, and I'm not sure who is the best qualified to answer this. There was a good deal of discussion brought up in the public hearing about substantiation of the studies done by the DNR. Is there anyone who would like to address that? Is that Paul or Mr. Schmidt or Mr. Stern? Mr. Schmidt.
I certainly can start that. We too have had conversations with the county, with the DNR and the Army Corps of Engineers to look at their reports and their studies, and they were standing by their permits that they gave. One of the reasons I think I was selected to perform this for the county is our track record at the Highway Department and actually caring for the environment and going through these processes with the bumblebee and with the turtle and with the monarch and stuff like that. So we do understand the permit requirements that are required to do and to undertake this type of a project and to still be respectful of those various species and plant life that's out there.
And you saw no indications of any errors on behalf of the work that was done by the DNR?
I did not. I'm very familiar with that site. You'll see that on site was an AT&T easement that we granted many years ago. The county did. I'm familiar with that. You can even see that sometimes it is wet. There is no doubt about that. You can see the tire marks from our tractors that are mowing that on that thing. So we'll definitely be as vigilant as we can to make sure that we decrease the impact as much as possible while we're doing construction and after.
Other comments or questions from the committee members? Mr. McCulick.
Thank you, Chairman Mary.
just a few observations, and I want to thank everybody for coming out today. You know, the people of Erin and of Washington County and the members of the board and the committee here, really to a person, just profoundly decent people. You know, I make sure everybody understands that. And I don't represent, I don't represent Washington County. I represent the people of the district that I represent, and I want to do, you know, what I think is in the best interests of the people that I represent. In this particular case, it's very difficult to set your emotions aside, but I've said before at meetings, I'm a logically driven person, and in this particular case, and for this committee, there's been precedent on things like this. It was not but a few months ago that we voted for someone on Big Cedar Lake. I believe it was to fill in 11,000 square feet in a wetland area, and they applied for their permits. The data was provided to us. You review it, and you try to make sure that due diligence is done. I personally toured this property yesterday. I met with Bob, and I walked through it, and I didn't find anything that didn't match the data that I have in front of me. And so, that being said, this in this circumstance, I can't view what the possible use of that property is when we allowed the one 2 months ago. And in my role, when I was on the board of review, we did for some businesses, whether it's the county or a business or an individual property owner, they have the right to reach out to have these variances, done, and we get a report back. And what they choose to do with that is not germane to what I have in front of me. That's not my business. I never asked that person that on Big Cedar Lake what they were going to do, with that property, where that driveway was going to go, what was going to be at the end of it. At that point, that's not germane to what I'm voting on. And so in this case, there isn't anything that I see that would make me, go different, than I have voted before in the past. I always will lean strongly towards the petitioner, the property owner. And if something is shown to be different, or something is askew, I'll ask the questions, and maybe down the road from that, there's litigation. Again, that's something that's not, my purview. So, and I'll just say that I personally live in the southwest corner of the city of Hartford, and behind my home is a 98-acre farm. It's owned by Joe Slosher, and it's a beautiful little part of the world. And when I built my home, I was sure that there was going to be a subdivision back there or something else put back there, and I would enjoy what I could while I could. And someday that's not going to be what's back there. It will be something else. And I don't know what that is, because the property owner has the right to decide who they're going to sell that to. And then that is going to go through a process. And so unless I bought that property, that's the way things will play out. So in this particular case, with regard to the precedents that have been set before, that I have personally set and that we've approved as a committee, I will be voting, for this, to pass, because I don't have any data that would tell me that I should vote differently than I have in the past with regard to the petitioner. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other questions or comments from the committee members? All right, hearing none, we will now vote, a verbal vote. Those in favor of approving the rezoning will vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Two opposed. Mr. Gallitz? Two opposing. You voted for the approval. And I apologize, I did not vote. I would vote in favor of the action. So it's 3-2, is that correct? All right, the rezoning is approved. The next action on this will be taken to the county board for a full approval of the board. Now, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Move back to our regular agenda and pick up with items in the Consent agenda, those being the minutes of the December 15th meeting, the 2022 DAT cap cost share extension and constructs, and the cost share permit payments for John H. Sagan Rail Farms. Is there a motion to accept these items as presented? Mr. Gallitz, Mr. Vespalic. All in favor of approving the consent agenda signify by saying aye. Opposed? The consent agenda is approved. Our first item on the discussion items this morning is the introduction of Land and Stone, which will deal with the Heritage Trails County Park land extraction feasibility and park planning. Are we set to proceed with this, Ms. Ludovic?
Yep. We are going to attempt to turn the presentation on the guest podium. Thank you so much. We talked about this item a little bit, a couple meetings back, as we were developing the RFP for the selection of a partner to explore land extraction out at Heritage Trails County Park. We have selected Land and Stone. We are in the very early phases of working towards what this project might look like. And we just wanted to offer the opportunity for Land and Stone to come and give you a little bit of an overview about what that project and what that program is.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. Morning. Thanks for taking the time to hear us on obviously a challenging morning, but thanks for hearing us out. So today we're basically going to introduce ourselves. I think you're all familiar with the Heritage Trails project as envisioned by the county. And we were one of many companies that requested to be part of the process. And through our application, we were ultimately selected by your team and through your process. But we thought it would be nice just to get a chance to know us a little bit better before we get into the details later on with what the project will actually be. So maybe if I go to the next one. First, just want to introduce myself. I'm a third generation owner operator of Land and Stone. My name is Hans Dawson. And in this picture is me when I got out of high school. I was actually a mechanic for our company, and my dad there's on the left, and my grandpa's in the yellow coat, and my uncle Jim, who's still with us, is on the right. Right now, my sister Heidi is also in our business and has been for quite a while. But more than being in the business, how we run our business matters a lot to us. Now we call them core values. That's kind of like what companies are doing, but really this is how I was raised. This is for my grandpa and for my dad and my uncle. It wasn't just about what we did. It was about how we did it. And we spent some time thinking about what that was and selling that and sharing that with our employees. And we hope to live those out all the time. So our core values, first and foremost, is we respect each other. How we interact with each other matters a lot. Just because we're a construction and heavy equipment business doesn't mean we can't be decent and empathetic to everyone around us. We care a lot about doing excellent work. We prize ourselves on being a very high standard of quality, not only in our products, but in our operations, in every aspect of our business. It's just part of our personality. And we continue to push as hard as we can in every area of our business because doing a good job really matters to us. We also attack problems in a business where we're analogous to farming and that it's land and equipment. You can't just wait for things to go right. If you wait for things to go right, you're going to end up in a world of hurt. So part of our core values, kind of our ethos is when we see something coming around a corner, we actually go after it and make sure that tomorrow works because we've decided to make it work. And then last, we care a lot about the future. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about here today. Not only from an operations point of view, this is where we really talk about safety with our teams, but how we treat our communities and how we treat each other so that in the future we have the platform to continue to do what we're doing. If you could take our next slide, Nate. So we actually created this graphic. This is the very first thing that people see when they come into our offices and when they get introduced to our business. And this is core of who we are. So what I was saying about our values, it goes beyond that. So our vision, we want to be the best miners in the world. And that's a big, bold sounding, dramatic sounding statement. And I don't mean we're going to be the biggest. We probably won't ever be the biggest mining company in the world. But I think we can be the best because we're actually building our company around the people that interact with our business. So having all of our stakeholders understood, so whether it's our customers, our vendors, our employees, our neighbors, or our owners, every one of those groups have different interests. And we're not going to sacrifice one for the sake of the other. They all matter. And so when you come into our business and you're part of our business, balancing the needs of everybody that interacts with us is core to what we do. And we actually made this is like our main like logo, and you'll find this on our website as well. So we actually, as part of our core operating principles, care a lot about the communities that we operate in. So if you go to our next slide, I want to chat a little bit about the Heritage Trail project itself. You guys are familiar with the project, and I'm not going to read through this whole slide, but we just took this section out just to call out the idea that this is a unique, special public-private partnership opportunity. And before we even committed to submitting our proposal, we wanted to make sure that we really understood what you guys were all about and what you wanted to see. The idea of reimagining a park to not only be something different in terms of a final landform, but also something that would provide the region and the community with necessary building materials that we all need, right? I mean, we all need roads, we need materials to build the new houses and development that we're excited for in the county. And then to leave a world-class destination showcase amenity for the county is pretty big. I mean, and this is something that matters to me. I live in Richfield. We use the Washington County parks with my kids. So the idea that we could do what if I could do for my kids and grandkids, what my grandpa did to me and show me what he worked on. And it was a neat part of our family ethos to know that like we worked on that project. And if we could do something like this together and leave something so that I can share that with not only our kids, but our neighbors, that Land and Stone was part of a cool development. We're excited about it, and we're excited to really set the bar at a very high level for executing on this project. So we hit our next slide. When we start talking about any type of like significant reshaping of the land, especially in the context of an aggregate business, there's a lot of things that come up. And I want to just broadly say before we kind of dive into these really briefly is that we care about all these things. Like I said, respecting each other and caring about the future. We couldn't be in our business for 3 generations with the goal of passing it on to my kids and grandkids if we just treated our neighbors poorly. All of these things matter to us. It's part of our brand. It's part of our operations. We can't sacrifice tomorrow for a convenient today. So in particular, the first thing is we want to be communicative with our neighbors, and you guys are part of that. We already had a chance to meet with the town of Polk, where the park is located. So that we're going to continue on throughout the whole process. So we want to be out front and open. Nate here runs our public relations and a few other departments for our company. He's handed out his card and cell phone to a whole lot of people. And anytime I would encourage you guys, if you'd like to come out and visit any of our existing operations or talk through the plan itself at the park, we'd love to do that. We'd love to brag about our operations and show you what we do in person. Another concern is there demand for this product? I can tell you as somebody that deals with a lot of customers in this county and in surrounding counties, the need for this material is real. There are several gravel pits in our region within a 15-mile radius of this site that are going to be running out of their reserves in the next 5 years. So there is a very real market demand that's going to have to be met somewhere. And this is a great location on a county highway, close to a state highway, that'll help us get to market quickly and without driving through a lot of residential areas. We had a concern brought up by one of our neighbors about 164. There is, if you can imagine, the park is kind of like a cross, the shape of the land. And there was a concern that we were going to access the eastern part of the cross, I guess, if you will, right through a couple of houses. That is not the case. So just want to clear that up. We're going to use the existing access area on the south, which is on County Highway E. And then the bulk of the material will go east to 164, and then the artery, obviously, from there to the marketplace. Been some concerns from our neighbors about blasting, and this is a sand and gravel operation, so different from our quarries. We do have a lot of quarries in the area as part of our business, and that operation does require blasting, but sand and gravel does not. So sand and gravel is naturally loose. It was left here by the glaciers, and so we just extract directly with hydraulic equipment, so front end loaders, excavators, that sort of thing. So there will be no blasting on the site. And then some of these next ones are common to a lot of operations, and we haven't gotten specific concerns about them, but I wanted to just touch on them briefly, let you know we're thinking about these things and we're listening as people bring them up so that we incorporate them into our designs. Dust is something that we deal with and mitigate on our existing operations, and having a lot of experience in this, it really comes from 2 basic things. The first is when you drive on roads, that's a source of dust. So just actually an open face of gravel really doesn't generate the dust. It's when those tires or tracks actually roll on and then generate dust. And that's actually very easily mitigated. So that's done through water trucks. So you put clean water on, and our business is somewhat unique. We buy brand new state-of-the-art water trucks. This is not something we buy old stuff and sprinkle when we have time or when the machines work. We actually spend money on this. They not only sprinkle the roads, but they have cannons so we can get hard to reach areas. And we know when to apply it and that sort of thing as part of our operations. The second area is really from processing equipment itself. So as a conveyor feeds to another conveyor, there's a chance that dust might puff up from there or from a screen. And again, this is something we have deep expertise, and we push far harder than the regulations would require us to do. So we are regulated, of course, by the state and the EPA on air emissions. We vastly exceed those. So our goal internal is to basically have the plants be contained within themselves. And we built a plant in Lannon that I'd love to show anybody, where we really push the limits on how much you can seal up crushers, screens, transfer points. We put vacuums on our transfer points to make sure there's negative pressure. So this is something that you can actually engineer to a high level of confidence that we're going to keep that dust inside the process. Noise is something that in this case, because it's a gravel deposit and because it's naturally sandy, that does help. We're actually only envisioning one single crusher on site for reducing the size of the rock, and the crusher we've selected, actually you and I can have a conversation right next to it. It's a different type of a technology. And again, I could show you one in person. This will have to be when we fire up because we just shut down for the season, but in spring, I could show you what it's like to stand next to it. And the rest is all contained with, something we have experience with, rubberizing our rock chutes, covering certain things to make sure that the noise is mitigated. And then all the machines that will be used on this project will be tier 4 final. And that's kind of a detailed little nuance, but the new equipment has regulations from the EPA that significantly reduces both noise and emissions. And all of that will be new equipment that were brought onto this site. So again, it's a crazy world we live in. You could be right next to an operating mining equipment and have a conversation. So it's a pretty cool time to be building these sort of things. Traffic. There's no way around it. To deliver sand and stone to market, you have to place it into a dump truck, and that dump truck has to go on a road. In this case, that will be County Highway E, so it'll be on a county property that is built for this kind of traffic, and then heading predominantly east to 164. And again, there is a little bit of a grade on County Highway E, and we will post internally and have a standard for our trucks to not use Jake brakes. And we would support anything that you guys want to do on a county level to enforce that with law, a posted area to make sure that that doesn't happen, because these new trucks can run quiet, and we just got to enforce that practice. Water is another area of concern, but I wanted to talk about this with a little bit of detail. So one, we're still testing the property. We don't know how deep the quality of the gravel goes. We're about halfway through our testing process. But even if there will be extraction of the gravel in the water, which again, we're not sure of yet, we will not be pumping the water down. So we will actually be excavating with the water table kept stable. And that is something that's pretty important, because one of our neighbors mentioned a concern about, well, will we draw water down and then will that drain their well? And one, that the extraction method we'll use will not affect the groundwater table. So the water will be maintained at its current level, and it will stay that way even if we end up dipping into that. But we're also happy to put into a contract a well guarantee. It's something that we're familiar with in our business. We don't have to use it a whole lot, but if something that you guys would like to see from us, we're happy to write a written well guarantee with money in a bank ready to go to if something ever were to happen with somebody's wells. And then the last, the habitat is part of what we're trying to create more positively. Obviously, when you're cutting into the ground, there will be a temporary disturbance to the area where you're digging. But we're excited to work with some of the best engineers in the area to build a new and exciting habitat in this park that'll not only have like the recreational uses, but it'll be good for outdoors and for the environment itself. And remember, we're trying to make something that's special so that we can share and kind of advertise in the future how good of a job we do. So having a project turn out really well and having a thriving habitat is kind of a calling card we're hoping to build together with you guys. So some specifics on this project. I'm going to go to the next slide, Nate. On the communication itself, we've already met with several neighbors. We met with the disc golf club, the mountain bikers, the snowmobile community, and the town of Polk. And then we're going to have continuing discussions, especially with the users of the park, to make sure that our design incorporates their concerns. And then we do have a meeting with law enforcement. You guys probably know, but there's a shooting range out on site, and we're going to be working to reimagine the shooting range with them so that it serves their current and future needs with the sheriff's department. So that's coming up in February, mid-February, right, Nate? Something like that. Yeah. Timeline. We've already gone through the request for proposal. We thank you guys and your staff for reviewing those, and we're excited to have been selected. We are currently exploring the park. All of our gravel samples have been taken off of the park and the holes reclaimed. We are now processing them through our laboratory. And while we get data in, we're already modifying our plant ideas and process ideas so that hopefully we can get to our engineering team very soon this spring to start the design process. And just so you guys know, we have in-house mining engineering expertise, but we wanted to have a really great end result. So we hired R.A. Smith to be our park designer. So the actual final park will be designed by R.A. Smith, which we looked in the area. We couldn't find a firm that had a better resume for park design. So we're happy to get their expertise and to get your and your staff feedback to incorporate into what this park could ultimately be. And that's going to be something that's iterative here over the next several months. So right now we're building out the geologic model. So we do that in our mine engineering software. We find out where the good gravel is and where it ends to kind of figure out the final shape of what it could look like. And then our team will then deliver an extraction limit, and then we're going to phase it with our engineering team. So we also have hired GZA Environmental to make sure that all the environmental bits are considered. So we're pretty excited to design this project with you guys. And then we have the park plan, reclamation plan, the actual extraction sequence, and then permits and legal review with your staff coming up this year. So again, we're super excited to be part of the process, and just can't thank you enough for thinking of the project and selecting us. And I don't know if this is time for questions, but I'm happy to take any questions now from you guys. And I'm also happy to tour anyone to our sites and talk further about it. So yeah, thanks very much.
Any questions from the committee members?
Thank you for that timeline. That was good to see what was coming next.
If I may just add one thing, I just wanted to clarify that. So there's a process here now that they're going through to kind of get that input and work on a park design and a development. And in my mind scenario, this comes back to this committee and ultimately the county board after those meetings occur and after those things happen. So there'll be a schedule provided and an invitation sent to you as well as other members of the county board about where and when to engage as it relates to specific feedback that we're going to be looking for as we try to see if this project makes sense to move forward. I also just wanted to share very briefly that this is as it relates to previous comments, that this is a highly regulated field. And so as part of the project, Nate had previously provided me a list of all of the permits that they have to obtain if the project does move forward related to the high capacity well, general air permits, pollutant discharge elimination system permits, reclamation permits, potentially shoreline wetland floodplain zoning permits, septic permits, possibly highway department permits, building permits potentially. So there is those pieces of it as well as part of the future process if the county board or somebody would choose to move forward with this project. So if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them.
Thank you for putting up with the delays this morning. I do want to thank Mr. Swinton for his very nice and appropriate worded letter to the landowners nearby. I thought it was very well done. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for coming this
Yeah,
morning.
thank you. Thanks for having us. Nice to see everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Our next item is the Fair Park Quarterly Report, which is postponed until our meeting in February. Then we'll go into the Parks and Golf Course Quarterly Reports, and unless someone has specific questions, we'll pass on further discussion on that item today. This moves us into our action items, the first of which is the USDA APHIS damage and abatement program claims. I'll entertain a motion in second so we can proceed with discussion on these items. Mr. Berg, Mr. McCulick, Mr. Sebo, you're up. Presentation, please.
Yes. Typically, the APHIS guy that usually shows up. I told him that I'll handle this for him because of the agenda items that we had today and figured it would be a long meeting. Yeah, there were 2 payments made for the wildlife damage. He's presented them in the past. The money is pass-through money through the county. We pay it, we get reimbursed from the DNR. There is a reduction, basically lack of a term here, a deduction from the amount that's paid. The landowner has to cover kind of the first $500 of cost and damage that's done. So if there's any questions, I'll take those.
Any questions? If none, then we'll vote on this. This is the approval of the abatement program claims. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you, Mr. Sebo. Next vote is the objecting authority on the pilot suspension of objecting authority plat review fees. As explained in the information in the packet, this action is a direct outgrowth of our discussion at the December meeting. We need a motion to consider further consideration. Mr. Vismalik. This Mr. McCulick, otherwise I was going to make the most second. All right. Any questions? Ms. Ludovic, please explaining how this approval of this pilot program will work and the total fee management. And you and I discussed briefly prior to this, is this something, and we brought this up at the December meeting, such that these fees should be reviewed on a scheduled basis, such that prior to we get into a budget, every time we get in, and now we're in a biennial budget program, all these fees should be looked at, qualified, increased, decreased, removed, or whatever. But at that point in time, I guess I'll just turn it over to you, Jamie, for any comments or discussion points.
Yes, thank you. The recommendation is that we eliminate the objecting authority fee for everybody at this point. After the last discussion on this item, it was actually, I believe, brought up by Supervisor McCulick and Supervisor Galitz that we were providing kind of preferential treatment, and we didn't go that far at the staff level when we had originally brought forward the suspension of the objecting authority fees for next generation housing. And the discussion really took it there. And so I think after we reconsidered that discussion and bringing it back, that there really is no, based on the guidance we received, there's really no reason to wait on eliminating this fee at this point in time. So our recommendation is that we do so for all development. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
So this is going to be applied across the board for all such proposals that would be coming up to us.
Yeah, essentially the county executive agreed, and we never thought that we should take it to that level until after this committee's discussion. So that's why it's before you today, and we've proposed it, that we think that the committee was ultimately correct. And so we've adapted and changed accordingly.
So we effectively would be voting to suspend the authority for plat review fees. Is that correct?
Correct. You'd be adopting the schedule that's attached to the report, which eliminates it at this point in time. That schedule is something that comes before the committee every biennium with the budget. It's also was brought forward to me that we are not discussing the service itself, but we do intend to bring the land division code forward soon, Paul, soon, in a few months. And at that point in time, the discussion around objecting authorities will also be before you.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Gallantz?
Thank you, Chair. So want to be clear, cancel and suspension. So suspension would be for the current biennium and or the fee setting for the next biennium, correct?
We're eliminating the fees off of this fee schedule.
Which is specifically for this biennium only.
Right. When this fee schedule yes and no. When the fee schedule comes back before you, it likely will not be there, right? So you would have to know that they were eliminated in order to have a discussion about whether or not they should be brought back.
Well, then, I mean, for transparency, it says pilot suspension of objective authority. It doesn't say cancellation of objective authority plat review fees in perpetuity. Because that's why I just want to make it very clear that if I'm voting on it, I'm voting on for a temporary suspension. But I personally believe that we need to, as you alluded to, Mrs. Ludovic, that there is a overarching land division code and fee review. And I think this should be part of that broader discussion, so that we, at this point in time, we don't completely eliminate it. If I heard you right, that we get that fee schedule come back next biennium, it's not going to be listed there. That's not what would be approving for today. I'd be approving for the suspension of it for all, but it's.
So the second sheet would be what you want to look at then in terms of what you're approving today. The actual fee schedule itself.
Correct, which is completely eliminating it versus suspension. I mean, you're right. The striking of objective subdivision plat review, removing that in its entirety that's different than what, the agenda is saying is a pilot suspension. In my mind, that's two different things. So while I'm in favor of suspending for all of the objective authorities that will come before us, now and some future, for how long a period of time is that? For me, suspension would be, and maybe it's an amendment to a motion. Excuse me, I'm just thinking out loud here. Maybe it's an amendment to the motion to be clear what it is that we would be approving or voting on. I don't know the rest of committee members, what you're thinking, but again, looking at the agenda item and how the committee report is listed, pilot suspension is different in my mind than cancellation or eliminating completely from the fee structure. And I believe that fee should be part of that overarching review that Mr. Sebo said is underway. And as a committee, we can look at that particular one. Is that service still needed? I think that was something that was brought up in the past, and I think staff has said that yes, there's value to the county for that. So if there is value to the county for that, and we incur expenses from staff to go through that process, including this committee continuing to review those in the future, well, then there should be some fee for that, in my opinion, because there's value to that service. So therefore, there should be a fee to it, not unlike the entire list of all other fees for shoreline, wetland, floodplain, land division, sanitary, et cetera.
Are you suggesting a different wording perhaps, or is it just a semantics thing?
Well, I mean, sorry, again, the action says pilot suspension. So for clarity of that, if this fee schedule, correct me if I'm wrong, this fee schedule is for effective January 1, 2023. So if for clarity, or for me, the suspension for the 2023 permit fee schedule, that I would be amenable to, because that implies that 2024, the fee schedule will be revisited. Is that a fair understanding?
Yes, sir.
If you approve this as it's in the packet, the language will be stricken on page, is that page 1? On page 2.
You're talking about under land division, where objective, where it is
Right.
yellowed and struck. So would it be clear that it's only for the 2020 and just for seeking clarification from anyone, if this is stricken for the 2023 permit fee, that is only for 2023. And as I said earlier, 2024 is a different story.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see your.
So if I understand you right, you would prefer to leave basically the whole highlighted area left without the stricken part and a note underneath that says these fees are suspended for 2023. And then they would be back on, or obviously not removed at all. They would still be there. And then 2024 budget and or the discussion of the land division codes and the modifications would then determine if that's going to be there in perpetuity or be gone forever.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
So, how would we form that as part of the motion? I mean, I could simply say, the motion would be to remove the preliminary 175 and the final 60 from the 2023 fee schedule. Or to make it 0, whatever term you want to use.
Well, and I guess just for simplicity would be is just a footnote, or your motion would be that you're approving the pilot to be for the 2023, basically the 2023 year. And then that footnote would go below that, those fee schedules, that there is no fee charge for 2023. And obviously then it's brought back as part of the 2024 budget.
Yeah, so the goal of this was to level the playing field, right? And so I'm under the impression in any business operation that these are reviewed, periodically and see if they're germane. So, the way I would look at this, Brian, is I would say that they're going, they're going to eliminate the fee. And that's going to be for private developers as well. So is that correct? Yeah. Yes. So, and that this is always subject to, to review, but, that if we were going to do something for next gen housing, we're going to offer it, also to our business partners that are developers, in the county as well. So, I mean, to me, that's a semantical difference, maybe, Brian, but, I'm fine with how it is here, and it can always be in the future reviewed or re-examined, correct? Yes, okay.
Mr. Vespoli.
What Mr. Gauss was talking about, I think if this is taken off of here, it won't be back on. I think a sub note, removing the fees, I think that would leave the language on there for future discussion. I'd say if we take it off, it's not going to be on the 2024, it won't be there. But if we have a sub note suspended for the 2023 and remove the fees, I think that way, at least it's there for the 2024 and we can discuss it again. Instead of removing the words, remove the fees, put a sub note on there, suspended for the 2023 season. Is that kind of where you're going, right? To leave the language there? I think a sub note, what you were talking about, I think is good. And then remove the fees, just make them 0.
Yes, because I believe it's a more discussion, and that's not germane to what we're doing today. It's completely removing the subdivision plat review is wholly different than removing the fees. So if that is strucken from this, arguably one could say, well, then we're no longer doing objecting to subdivision plat review, which I don't believe is what we're talking about. So that I would make clear. I took a little stab here that maybe the motion would be to reduce the 2023 schedule for a fee schedule for objecting subdivision plat review, preliminary and final both to 0.
Oh, so no real action required. All right. Mr. McCooley.
Can I just make a note? And that's, and that sounds good. Can we just say that it's suspended indefinitely? Otherwise, if you just do it for 2023, what it looks like was we just did it to serve our own purpose to help next gen. And that, that we're not going to carry that forward. So I like what you and Joe say, but maybe we just say that, it's suspended indefinitely, that this fee is indefinitely suspended.
Division code and fee review. I think it still needs to be.
Microphone.
Reality is the request was specifically for next gen housing. So that's the reality of it. So I just want to be transparent. So to eliminate it just for 2023, that was the expressed intent purpose. And this action is to make a level playing field, as you and I both agreed. So I can agree to suspend it for 2023, but I don't think it should be indefinitely. I think administration should come back and determine, is that objecting authority for bringing value to the county, and should we continue to do that? And that's a bigger discussion than what we're being asked to do today. That's just suspending the fee specifically for next gen housing.
Can you reread your proposed friendly amendment?
My amendment language would be to approve reducing the 2023 fee 2023 permit fee schedule to reduce the 2023 the fee schedule. I just want to make sure that part for objecting subdivision plat review to $0 for both preliminary and final, because those are the two items that are listed. Yes, for 2023.
Everyone understand that?
Correct.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, let's vote to Mr. Sebo.
Sure, you're okay with the wording as I was jotting down. So we'd have a little footnote underneath the objecting fees and just say the objecting authority fees have been waived for 2023 based on the Land Use and Planning Committee meeting today's date. Right?
Yes, yes. Any other questions? Then we'll vote to support with the friendly amendment as worded. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Nay. No, I vote to support. I'm sorry. I get too tied up with this stuff. All right, the final item today is D, objecting authority for the preliminary plat for the Oaks of Jackson subdivision in the Village of Jackson. This seeks a no objection ruling from this committee. A motion for consideration, please.
I have to point out, we voted on the amendment. Do we now have to vote on?
No, it was considered a friendly amendment, so we're okay. Okay, anyway, a motion to consider, Mr. Berg. Mr. Vespalic. Any questions regarding the no objection ruling from this committee? Mr. Sebo. Comments?
Oh, no, I was gonna say, are you on the Oaks of Jackson or did I miss
Yeah, we're
Oh,
Oaks
you are,
Oaks
okay.
of Jackson, yes,
All
sir.
right. Nothing really more to add other than this is the first next gen housing that came through and the fees have been paid. So this time.
Comments or questions? Then we would consider, I'm sorry, we'll vote on this, seeking a no objection ruling from this committee. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Passes. Our next meeting will be at 7:30 a.m. on Thursday, February 16th. Thank you, everyone, for your time. We are adjourned.